Is this a return of common sense politics? Well, Pierre Poilievre is shaking up the Canadian mainstream media in a way that the country has never seen, and there's people even drawing comparisons to Donald Trump from 2016. But there is one thing that is a stark difference between the two, which has arguably made Justin Trudeau capitulate to Pierre even before the election. Watch this heated exchange before I tell you more about it.
The so-called dental care program, according to the government's own numbers, has not helped 97% of people.
Well, no, 1 million Canadians, more than 1 million Canadians have access to that program, have received coverage to that program. 89% of dentists in this country, according to government numbers, 89% of dentists in this country have signed up for the dental care program. Would a conservative government gut those programs? Would a conservative government cut the dental care program? Can you tell the 1 million Canadians who are right now receiving coverage under that plan whether or not they will continue to have coverage under a conservative government?
So first of all, you've revealed your own bias in simply accepting government propaganda. We don't know how many people have actually benefited from it. Is that just because you say so, sir? Is that just because you say so? What evidence or data do you have that we cannot trust those numbers? Oh, where do you want me to start? You could start with Monday. Were you awake on Monday? Their deficit was 55% bigger than they said 8 months ago. So we can't trust what they say on financial numbers. Their carbon tax was not supposed to go above 11 cents a liter, and the media parroted those government talking points like you are right now. And the tax is now up to 17 cents, and it's headed to 61 cents. The numbers on immigration, they tell us they can't even tell us how many people are in the country illegally. So when the government puts out a propaganda piece to the media, which then gets regurgitated without any scrutiny, claiming that they've done all of these wonderful things, I'm suspicious. I want to see the evidence.
You know what? It jumped out at me at first. It is so refreshing to see a politician that actually knows the numbers off the top of his head, even more than actual journalists on the television. And the truth is, Pierre is right about the vacuum of truth that exists with whatever platform metrics that the Trudeau government has put out. Take something like inflation, for example, which is the most broad influence on voter perception for how the government is performing, and for the last 10 years since Justin Trudeau took office. Canadians have felt a stark disconnect between the official rates of inflation, which looked a lot more optimistic, versus the consumer price index and the general increase in living costs that they felt every day. Poverty rates have increased to 10% of the population, representing nearly 4 million people, to the point that twice as many Canadians today have to resort to food banks as they did in 2019. Meanwhile, reports from places like Montreal Economic Institute have straight up called the official government reporting on inflation as a broken thermometer that fails to capture the misery and struggle of the average working class Canadian. Not just that, how can anyone claim to trust the Trudeau government's record or numbers when even one of the most fundamental promises to Canada's lower middle class was betrayed using complex tax policy shifts? That promise was of paying lower income taxes, which was reported by the Fraser Institute a few years ago. 73% of Canadian families in the lower middle group are paying higher federal personal income tax in 2019 than in 2015. Now, what's interesting is that the media, which is supposed to be government's watchdog, is instead doing the government's bidding. And you saw that in this moment that's going viral as a reporter fails to even explain what he means when pushed to think just a layer deeper by Pierre.
On the topic, I mean, in terms of your sort of strategy currently, you're obviously taking the populist pathway.
What does that mean?
Well, appealing to people's more emotional levels, I would guess. I mean, certainly you tap very strong ideological language quite frequently.
Like what?
Left wing, this and that, right wing. I mean, it's that type of ideological spectrum.
I never really talk about left or right.
Anyways, I don't
really believe in that.
Okay. A lot of people would say that you're simply taking a page out of the Donald Trump book.
Like which people would say that?
Well, I'm sure a great many Canadians, but...
Like who?
I don't know who, but...
Well, you're the one who asked the question, so yeah. You must know somebody.
Okay. I'm sure there's some out there, but anyways, the point of this question is, I mean, why should Canadians trust you with their vote, given, not just the sort of ideological inclination in terms of taking the page out of Donald Trump's book, but
what are you
also
talking about? What page? What page? Can you give me a page? Give me the page. You keep saying
in terms of turning things quite dramatically in terms of Trudeau and the left wing and all of this. I mean, you make quite a, it's quite a play that you make on it. So I'm
not
just
sure.
wondering.
I don't know what your question is.
Then forget that.
And this clip's going viral for all the right reasons, because apart from exchanges like this with the media that we've seen here with Donald Trump, Pierre didn't really have to do much to demonstrate how hollow that comparison is beneath the surface. For one, simply being more conservative doesn't put you in the same box as Donald Trump. Unlike him, Pierre is a career politician with many of the more traditional conservative worldviews than even the modern Republican Party that the US holds. Not just that, even their rhetoric and styles are vastly different, which really doesn't leave much behind for people wanting to put Pierre in the same list as Trump, Jair Bolsonaro, or Javier Milei. Now, of course, Pierre doesn't need to be the Canadian version of Donald Trump to become a force to be reckoned with. Take a look at this heated exchange, for example, on the floor of the Canadian Parliament, when Pierre calmly dismantled a shouting Justin Trudeau with a few simple statements.
In 2015, Stephen Harper presented a budget that had slashed funds for policing, slashed funds for CBSA officers, slashed funding for Veterans Affairs Services, and we were there to clean up the mess, to cut taxes for the wealthiest 1%, lower them for the middle class, to support families, to start moving forward on gun control in real ways, while the Conservatives cozy up to the American gun lobbies. We've continued to step up and keeping Canadians safe. Let them bring assault weapons back to our streets. We'll keep Canadians safe.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Wow, is he ever losing control of himself? Oh my goodness. Screaming and hollering like that. Mr. Speaker, it's his press release that says that in Toronto, auto thefts are up 300% since he took office. His solution is to hold a summit. He held a summit on food prices. Food prices went up. He held a summit on housing. Housing costs doubled. How much is crime going to rise after all the bigwigs go to his summit?
Totally priceless, especially because it's not that often you see Justin Trudeau out of his character like this. But it all appears as authentic as ever, especially since he's had the privilege of perhaps any other leader in the Western world of having the longest consecutive time in office to implement his progressive agenda, and all he's done is prove how disastrous it really is. That's why in these next elections, a guy like Pierre promising to axe the tax is positioned to take the reins, coming up with a pretty traditional conservative template that Canadians now want to go back to. Of course, if that comes with a new modern flair like a charismatic politician like Pierre, that's very welcome. Especially if also he knows to keep the media in check in this example of the very few times we've seen him fire up a little bit.
Why did your party want to grant over $100 million in regulatory relief to the mainstream media?
We don't want to give any tax dollars to the mainstream media. Our belief is that the mainstream media and all...
Decision then? Your party's decision to grant regulatory relief?
So I'll answer your question. The media that is bought and paid for, where are you from, by the way? Which outlet are you in? Which outlet? Which outlet?
Canadian Press.
Ah, okay, Canadian Press. So you're talking about tax dollars for media. Isn't CBC your biggest? Isn't no? I can answer.
I asked regulatory.
Yeah, and do you want to answer?
Why does your party want to grant $100 million in regulatory relief to the mainstream media?
When would you like me to respond? Okay, good. Okay, great. So of course you are a tax-funded media outlet and spreading Justin Trudeau's message.
Why did you
and so you're interrupting me again. You're interrupting me again. I am answering the question.
Do you regret granting $100 million in regulatory relief to the mainstream media?
Your question is false. So if you can allow me to correct your falsehoods, then we can answer the question directly. So, false. Canadian Conservatives do not believe in giving tax dollars to media outlets. That's Justin Trudeau. That's Justin Trudeau. That's Justin Trudeau. Okay, if you don't want me to answer the question, I'll move on to someone else. You're a tax-funded mouthpiece to the PMO. That's the reality. So,
question answered. You committed.
I'm trying to. I'm trying to, but you're heckling. Are you going to let me answer the question, or are you just going to heckle on behalf of Justin Trudeau?
Now, of course, it remains to be seen whether Pierre can rise to power in 2025, and it's surely going to be one heck of a duo on the North American continent with leaders like Trump and Pierre. And while their style and brand may be different, there's a core of social conservatism and fiscal libertarianism to both of them, which signals a new political shift on this continent. But let me know in the comments how you see it panning out, because 2025 may prove to be the year that they're finally put to the real test.